In the early 2000s, one of Nintendo's favorite pastimes was to make strange peripherals for their consoles and see what stuck. Even as early as the NES era, peripherals like Rob the Robot or the Zapper have always been available for game developers to mess around with. One company that really took to using these odd peripherals was Game Freak, a company so intertwined with Nintendo's strange add-ons that they literally programmed the Game Boy camera. And it was perhaps because of this that Game Freak also took a liking to one other item that Nintendo released, the Game Boy Printer. The Game Boy Printer is a small device that connects to your Game Boy via a link cable, and as the name suggests, prints certain images when instructed to by a game. The paper it uses is thermal paper that prints via heating rather than ink, very similar to a receipt printer. The lack of ink does have a trade-off, meaning that the thermal paper will fade over time if exposed to harsh temperatures. Pokémon was one of the biggest franchises to use this peripheral extensively, and Nintendo released a special Pikachu Yellow version of the printer coinciding with Pokémon Yellow's release in Japan that features Pikachu, Venusaur, and Charizard, along with a yellow plastic body and Pokeball feed button. So let's dive in and see how many different features the Game Boy printer has throughout the Pokémon franchise. But first, you might be wondering how I managed to get a Japanese exclusive version of this peripheral despite living in the United States. And that brings us to today's sponsor, Buyee. Buyee is a proxy service you may be familiar with if you've seen my other videos, as they are how I acquire many Japan-exclusive variations that are never sold in the United States. Japan gets lots of regional exclusive limited editions, including many 3DS consoles and other variations of other Nintendo hardware. By using Buyee, you can purchase things from Mercari, Rakuten, and Yahoo Auctions Japan, along with a myriad of other Japanese shopping services, which Buyee will then ship to you internationally. If that sounds interesting to you, you can sign up for Buyee by scanning the QR code on screen, or by using the link in the description to get 2,000 yen off of your first purchase. Unsurprisingly, the Game Boy and Game Boy Color had no shortage of Pokémon spin-off titles, and a few of them were even compatible with the Game Boy printer. The Pokémon Trading Card Game and the Pokémon Trading Card Game 2, Here Comes Team GR, were Game Boy Color remakes of the first few sets of the physical trading card game, and have multiple print functions the player can access from their PC. If the player has any saved deck lists, they can print them out line by line with card names and quantities. If you wanted a list of every card you own, the printer can do that too, but given the sheer number of individual cards you can acquire in even just the first few sets of the TCG, this is one of the longest prints available in any game compatible with this accessory. Finally, if you just wanted to view a specific card in your collection, they can be printed out individually, although on a much smaller scale than any real Pokémon card. The pixel art for these cards is quite well made, but if you wanted to use base set Scyther in a deck, you're probably better off just getting a real copy. TCG2 Here Comes Team GR was only released in Japan, and contained cards from the Team Rocket expansion in addition to the other few sets contained in the first game, and shares all of the same functionalities as the first game with regards to printing. The last Pokémon spin-off title with a use for the Game Boy printer is Pokémon Pinball, which lets you print the high score table and that's it. Disappointing maybe, but I guess you can only fit so much in that massive battery-powered rumble pack. Speaking of the TCG game, all 3DS Virtual Console re-releases of any game with Game Boy printer support have had this functionality removed, even if you could somehow fit a link cable into your 3DS charging port. Onto the first main series title with printer support, we have Pokémon Yellow. There are two main print functions you've most likely seen, even if you've only played Yellow casually. The PC in every Pokémon Center has a Print Boxes option that, true to its name, will print out a list of the names of the Pokémon in the current box. The other can be found when viewing the Pokedex list with the Print option, that can be selected to print out the Pokedex entry of the selected Pokémon. Now if the track that plays while you're printing from the Pokedex sounds familiar, it's because that it's been reused in the remakes of Pokémon Yellow, Gold, Silver, and Crystal. In Heart Gold and Soul Silver, this track was remastered and used when connecting to the Pokewalker, and then it was remastered again in Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, where it can be heard while connecting to the Pokeball Plus controller or to Pokemon Go. Other functions of the Game Boy printer in Yellow are less widespread and require the player to go to a specific spot in Kanto to activate them. If you talk to the chairman of the Vermilion City Pokemon fan club, he'll offer to print out the summary screen of one of your Pokemon, including all of its stats and moves on one screen. Another NPC who can print for you is the surfing dude who lives south of Fuchsia City. This man has a Game Boy printer in his house, which will initially say it's some sort of weird machine. and later will display your high score for a minigame known as Pikachus Beach. So how do you play Pikachus Beach? Well, all you need is a Pikachu that knows Surf, obviously. How do you obtain a Pikachu with Surf? Well, aside from winning a contest run by Nintendo or Game Freak back in the 1990s, the only way to get one in the modern day is to go to Pokemon Stadium for the N64. If you beat all of the cups on all difficulties, you will get challenged by Mewtwo, who will appear and let you select 6 Pokemon for a 1v6 battle. After defeating Mewtwo, you can challenge the cups again in Round 2 mode, with our interest being the Round 2 Prime Cup. Once you reach Master Ball difficulty in the Prime Cup, you must use a team comprised only of Pokemon from the game inserted in the N64 Transfer Pack, and you must choose Pikachu as one of your 3 Pokemon for the final battle, though Pikachu doesn't have to appear in the battle or participate. If you do all of that, you will get this special screen after you win, allowing Pikachu to forget one of its moves and learn Surf, which also unlocks a unique Surfing Pikachu sprite when you surf using Pikachu in both Yellow, Gold, Silver, and Crystal. And after that massive detour, we're finally free to play Pikachus Beach, where you score points by doing flips when Pikachu jumps off the waves, building up speed in order to execute longer combos. In this manner, it's surprisingly similar to Mantine Surf, a minigame that wouldn't be introduced until Ultra Sun and Moon decades later, and even comes full circle by awarding a Surfing Pikachu if you get top scores across the different beaches in Alola. In Pikachus Beach, you can hold left or right to angle Pikachu while he's in the air, and holding a direction long enough will eventually do a full flip, provided Pikachu hasn't slammed back into the water yet. Successfully flipping and landing with Pikachu's surfboard at the same angle as the water will award points. A single flip is worth 50 points, a double flip in one direction is worth 150, a double flip in 2 directions 180, a triple flip in one direction 350, and finally, a triple flip in 2 directions is worth 500 points, and I have only landed it twice in hundreds of attempts. After playing this one minigame for hours, my personal best ended up being 7,097 points, which I doubt I'll crack anytime soon. But if you wanted to try and beat my high score, the soon-to-be unavailable 3DS Virtual Console release of Pokemon Yellow lets you play Pikachus Beach, so long as you have the starter Pikachu, regardless of whether it knows Surf. Once we're satisfied with our high score, the Beach House printer will print it out whenever we like, so long as we still have a Pikachu with Surf in our party. The last printable screen in Pokemon Yellow is also the most difficult to access, as it requires you to complete 100% of the game. The Pokedex Diploma awarded to you after catching 150 Pokemon. Funnily enough, the number caught is checked rather than if you have every species registered, unlike in later games, as the developers never accounted for someone like me having Mew but not Omastar. If we make our way to Celadon City, we can stop by the Game Freak office in Celadon Condominiums, where the game director will award us the diploma for our efforts. By talking to the graphic designer, you can print your diploma, showing your total playtime and revealing artwork of Pikachu and Mew that is hidden under the bottom edge of the Game Boy screen. The last Pokemon games that were released with Game Boy printer support were the 3 Johto games, Gold, Silver, and Crystal. With some of the best shiny odds in history and connectivity to one of the best spin-offs in history, the developers really hid quite a lot in these 3 cartridges. Continuing the functions found in Yellow, the Pokemon Center PC still has the print boxes option, and the photography studio at Cyanwood City can print the summary of a chosen Pokemon, which even includes if it's shiny, although as Benjamin Franklin said, all Pokemon are shiny in grayscale. The player's Pokedex can once again print the entry of any registered Pokemon, which now includes the footprint, as well as the potential for version differences depending on which game the entry was printed from. Just like in Kanto, collecting at least 249 Pokemon and heading to Game Freak's office in Celadon City will give you the option to print another diploma, this time revealing artwork of Pikachu and Pichu. With the advent of holdable mail items, there is now a secret print option if the player presses Start and Select while viewing a message that will send it to the Game Boy printer. This will even print the pattern specific to the type of mail being held, including the mystery gift exclusive mails such as this music mail. Another in-game printer like the one in the Pikachus Beach house can be found at the Ruins of Alph Research Center, where the player can find a stamp printer in the top right. This machine is unlocked once the player has caught all 26 forms of Unknown available in Gold, Silver, and Crystal. as unknown exclamation point and question mark forms were introduced in Fire Red and Leaf Green. This printer allows the player to make commemorative unknown stamps, and you can even spell words by printing unknown in a continuous strip without tearing the paper. These unknown stamps are one of the shortest prints available in any functionality of the Game Boy printer, and sometimes require printing a blank space to be visible above the tear line. But there are worse completion rewards for finding all the unknown. Eventually, the relentless march of time moved us from the Game Boy to the Game Boy Advance, and the Game Boy printer stopped receiving support alongside its namesake console. Because the GBA uses a different link cable than the Game Boy and Game Boy Color systems, it simply couldn't use its new cable to connect to old peripherals. While the Game Boy printer will likely just be a novelty in Pokemon history, remembered for making scraps of receipt paper for parents to clean up, I find myself charmed by its novel concept, and even used it to make some nice wall decoration using the Kanto and Johto Pokedex prints. Thanks for exploring this niche little peripheral with me, and thanks for watching.